My student told me she was carrying my husband's child. I was in shock because my husband had been dead for 7 years. My student, Renee Blue, comes from a poor family and her mother suffers from uremia. Out of sympathy, I lent her some money. She promised to pay me back after graduation. However, on graduation day, she handed me an ultrasound and told me, "Your money comes from your husband anyway, right? I'm pregnant with your husband's baby, so I won't be paying you back. Also, you should step aside." I was in shock because my husband had been dead for 7 years. On graduation day, I went to congratulate my students as their lecturer. I also planned to ask Renee for the $20,000 I had lent her for school and medical expenses. But when I saw her, before I even said anything, she gave me a look of contempt and said, "Candace, go get your car and take me home." I was a bit stunned. "What did you say?" Renee scoffed, pulled out an ultrasound report, and handed it to me. Confused, I took the document. Said early pregnancy, about 10 weeks along. I was speechless. What were these college students thinking? They think they could treat their lecturer like a chauffeur. Just because they were pregnant? Why was she acting so entitled? "Renee Blue, your pregnancy has nothing to do with me. Why should I take you home?" Her bestie, Fiona, immediately chimed in. "How can you say that, Miss Jonah? Renee has difficulty moving around because she's pregnant. If it weren't because your car is nice, comfortable, and safe, we wouldn't even want to ask you. What kind of nonsense is that? What does it matter how nice my car is? Who are you to demand anything from me?" I was beyond words and wanted to leave, but Renee blocked my way, arms crossed. "Candace, not only are you driving me home today, you're going to drive me home every day from now on. You're also going to prepare all my meals and take good care of me and my baby. You'll do everything I say. If I feel the slightest bit of discomfort, you'll pay for it." I took a deep breath to calm myself down, then touched her forehead to make sure she didn't have a fever. I couldn't help but remark, "If your brain is fried, you should go see a doctor. You're just pregnant, not giving birth to a goddess. Why should I serve you? Your comfort or discomfort has nothing to do with me. You're insane." Fiona and Renee exchanged glances, both looking smug. Fiona stepped forward and confidently patted Renee's belly, while looking at me arrogantly. "Don't you know, Miss Jonah, Renee is carrying your husband's baby? Your husband is the president of Lennox Corporation, so this baby will become the heir of Lennox Corporation." I was stunned and didn't know how to respond. After all, my husband, Igor Lennox, had been dead for 7 years. My reaction made Renee and Fiona feel even more smug. "What's the matter, Candace? Are you scared now? If you're scared, apologize and admit your mistake. Take good care of me until I give birth. And maybe out of the kindness of my heart, I'll let your husband leave you a few $1,000s when he divorces you." Fiona, trying to please Renee, became even more sharp-tongued. "Miss Jonah, if you ask me, you should be thanking Renee. I heard you and your husband have been married for 7 years, but you still can't get pregnant. Could it be that you're a hen that can't lay eggs? What a shame that is for your husband's family. Renee is actually helping you out by getting pregnant with your husband's child." I rolled my eyes. My husband had been dead for 7 years Of course, I couldn't get pregnant. My husband. That's enough. "Candace, your husband already told me that he's grown tired of you. Just looking at your almost 30-year-old face is enough to make him sick, unlike mine, with skin full of youthful glow." Before I could speak, Renee interrupted me triumphantly. She even touched her own face, full of vanity. "You must be mistaken. Oh, right, Candace. As for the money I owe you, forget about it. We all know it's your husband's money. Anyway, I'm pregnant with your husband's baby, so I'm not going to return the money anymore. Also, you should step aside." Renee didn't give me a chance to speak. He kept talking over me. Fiona also chimed in like a good lapdog. "Miss Jonah, you're driving a luxury car, wearing designer clothes, and enjoying all of Mr. Lewis's financial resources, but you can't give him an heir. If I were you, I'd be so ashamed of myself. Fortunately, Renee is kind and fertile, and she's about to give your husband a legitimate child. You should do the smart thing. Take out your luxury clothes and bags for Renee to choose from, to make her happy. If she's happy, you'll suffer less." Listening to their ridiculous demands made me speechless. Before Renee could say anything more outrageous, I quickly spoke. "That's enough. You too. My husband has been dead for 7 years. So how can he get you pregnant through a dream? Before you try to scam someone, you should do a background check first. Smearing a dead person's name." I thought Renee and Fiona would shut up after I told them the truth. But Renee simply snorted and looked at me mockingly. "Candace, how shameless can you be? You're saying Igor is dead just to provoke me? He's your husband, you vicious woman. I'll definitely tell Igor about this the next time I see him. He'll dump you immediately. Fiona immediately comforted Renee. There's no need to get mad. She's not worth it. He's probably just saying that to make you mad, so that it'll affect your pregnancy. You're evil, Miss Jonah. Hearing that, Renee immediately feigned understanding. Her gaze became filled with hostility. So that's your plan, Candace? Just so you know, the baby is a boy. Igor already took me to check the gender. Igor said that as soon as the baby's born, he'll have a life of wealth and comfort. So don't even think about laying a finger on my son. Extreme exasperation. I found myself laughing. I looked right at Renee and said, "Are you deaf?" I said, "My husband's dead, so there's no way he can get you pregnant. If you've been scammed, go to the police. Don't come to me and act crazy." Nonsense. They couldn't hold back her anger anymore. After hearing that, she took out her phone and held up a photo for me to see. "Look, this is the president's office of Linus Corporation. Who else can enter this office besides your husband? Who else can control the entire Lewis Corporation? If you dare say Igor is dead again, I'll call Igor right now and tell him to divorce you immediately." I checked out the photo. It really was the president's office of Lewis Corporation. But who else could enter the office besides me? The company's cleaning lady. My assistant. The more I thought about it, the more confused I became. I waved my hand dismissively. "Okay, call him right now. Tell him to divorce me right now. Let's see what you can do." Renee angrily took out her phone and called several times. But no one answered. She cleared her throat awkwardly and said, "Igor must be in a meeting. I'll tell him when he calls me back." After the meeting, I took a deep breath and looked at Renee as your lecturer. "Out of responsibility for you, I'll tell you again, my husband is dead. If the person who got you pregnant told you he was my husband, then you've probably been scammed also. I don't know how you got that photo, but Linus Corporation has been under my leadership in recent years. Candace, you're so shameless. You can't be trying to say that. Linus Corporation got to where it is today because of your leadership." Right before I could finish speaking, Renee interrupted me again, laughing hysterically with Fiona. I shrugged. "What's so funny? Linus Corporation was indeed under my management. 7 years ago, my husband Igor had a terminal illness. He did not want to marry me at first because of that, but he also wanted to leave the entire Lens Corporation to me. So in the end, we registered our marriage. That way I could inherit all his assets smoothly as his widow. After his death, I felt depressed for several years and could not move on. The psychiatrist suggested that I temporarily leave my usual environment. So I came to the college to be a lecturer." Candace, you're sounding more and more ridiculous. You're just an unremarkable college lecturer. How can you lead an entire corporation? Don't make me laugh. It's so funny. You can really get away with saying anything these days. Do you understand what the president of a big corporation is? Renee and Fiona continued to mock me. Then Renee stepped forward and snatched the car keys from my hand. "All right, stop embarrassing yourself. Since you won't drive me home, I'll take your car and that Hermes you carried to work yesterday. Remember to bring it to me tomorrow. I really like it." With that, they arrogantly turned around and walked to my car. Instead of fighting them to get the keys back, I called 911 and reported that my car had been stolen. I did not go home that night, and instead stayed in the teacher's apartment provided by the college. After all, I hadn't figured out who this husband of mine, who got Renee pregnant, was, and I was very curious. At 11 p.m. that night, I received a call from the police. They informed me that my car had been found, and the car thieves were at the police station. I arrived at the police station and heard Fiona crying before I even went inside. "Renee, didn't you say Mr. Linus really likes you? Then why hasn't he come to pick you up yet?" The police said that we stole Candace Jonah's car. If the charge is confirmed, my life is over. I only got into trouble because I was helping you. You have to get me out of this mess. Renee was also feeling anxious, so she snapped back irritably. "Shut up. Igor must be busy. That's why he's not answering my call. Otherwise, there's no way he would leave me at a place like this. I'm carrying his son, so I think he's just playing you." Fiona's mood became irritable because she was detained. Their friendship had always been superficial, and now her tone towards Renee grew unkind. She rolled her eyes and wanted to continue complaining, but when she turned around and saw me, she immediately became agitated. "And this, Jonah, how dare you show your face after doing this to us?" Upon hearing that, Renee immediately turned around. She was clearly emotional, yet she still retained her arrogance. "I can't believe you called the cops on us. That was not a smart move. I've already contacted your husband, and he'll be here soon. We'll see how he deals with you." I crossed my arms, leaned on the wall, tilted my head, and raised my eyebrows. "Really? I haven't seen my husband in years. If you can really get my husband here, I'll actually be grateful, huh? Renee became even more unhappy. She turned around to continue making calls. About an hour later, we finally heard the sound of a car pulling up outside. Renee leaped up in excitement. Igor is here to pick me up. As she said that, she looked outside. The man in the car got down and rushed over to hug Renee. He asked, his tone anxious. Babe, are you okay? Is our baby okay? Renee immediately leaned into the man's arms like a delicate flower. Babe, that old hag made me cry. The baby is sad too. Hurry up and teach that stupid woman a lesson. Hearing that, the man glared at me angrily. You old hag, how dare you, ma'am? The man's voice was full of false bravado, thick with the kind of manufactured authority you only see in bad movies. He strutted through the double doors of the precinct, adjusting the lapels of a suit that I instantly recognized. It was a knockoff Tom Ford, poorly tailored at the shoulders. You old hag, how dare you? He didn't get to finish his sentence. As he turned his head and his eyes locked onto my face, the words died in his throat. I watched in real time as the blood completely drained from his face, leaving him looking like a freshly powdered corpse. His jaw went slack. The flashy, arrogant swagger he had walked in with evaporated in a millisecond, replaced by a violent, full-body tremble. I leaned back against the cold tile wall of the police station, crossing my arms. I recognized him immediately. Derek? I said, my voice dangerously calm. Derek Vance, isn't it? Deputy manager of the Facilities and Maintenance Department at Lennox Corporation. Renee, who was still clinging to his arm like a parasite, frowned in confusion. She tugged at his sleeve. Igor, what is she talking about? Why is she calling you Derek? Tell her to drop the charges right now. She had me arrested for taking her stupid car. Derek didn't look at her. He couldn't. His eyes were glued to me, wide with a terror so pure, it was almost comical. His knees actually buckled slightly, and he had to grab the edge of a nearby desk to keep from collapsing. And Madam President, Derek stammered, his voice cracking into a high-pitched squeak. He swallowed hard, sweat suddenly beading on his forehead. P. President Jonah. What? What are you doing here? Renee froze. Fiona, who had been glaring at me from a plastic waiting chair nearby, suddenly sat up straight. Madam President? Renee echoed, her voice shrill. Igor, stop joking around. Just because she's your wife doesn't mean you have to be polite to her. You said you were divorcing her. Derek finally snapped out of his paralyzing shock, but only because Renee's words had essentially signed his death warrant. He violently shoved Renee away from him. She stumbled back in her designer heels, almost falling over. Shut up, Derek roared at her, his face twisting in panic. Shut your mouth, you stupid, crazy bitch. Who the hell are you calling Igor? Are you trying to ruin my life? Renee let out a gasp of shock, her hands flying to her stomach. You pushed me. I'm carrying your son, the heir to Lennox Corporation. There is no heir. Derek screamed, his voice echoing through the quiet precinct. A couple of police officers at the front desk stopped typing to watch the show. I'm not Igor Lennox. Igor Lennox is dead. My name is Derek Vance. Silence descended on the room. It was thick, suffocating, and absolutely beautiful. Renee stared at him, her brain clearly short-circuiting as it tried to process the information. Fiona had turned completely pale, her eyes darting between Derek, Renee, and me. I took a slow step forward, my heels clicking sharply against the linoleum floor. Let me get this straight, I said, keeping my tone mild, though the fury simmering underneath was palpable. You used your access card as a maintenance manager to sneak this college girl into my late husband's preserved office. You told her you were Igor Lennox. And you told her that I was your Baron, soon-to-be ex-wife. Derek fell to his knees. Literally. He hit the floor so hard it echoed. President Jonah, I swear to God, I didn't mean for this to happen, he begged, crawling a few inches toward me before a police officer stepped forward and put a hand on her holster, warning him to stay back. Derek raised his hands in surrender, tears streaming down his face. It was just a stupid lie. She was on a dating app looking for a rich guy. I just wanted to impress her. I only brought her to the executive floor on a Sunday when the building was empty. I never thought she would actually confront you. I didn't even know she was your student. You're lying, Renee suddenly shrieked. She lunged forward, grabbing Derek by the collar of his cheap suit. You're testing me, aren't you? This is a test. Igor, stop this. I saw your bank account balance. You showed me the millions. Derek shoved her off again, looking at her with absolute disgust. That was a screenshot I bought off the internet for $5, you gold-digging idiot. I make $70,000 a year. I drive a 2014 Honda Civic. The only reason I could even afford to take you out to dinner is because I've been skimming off the cleaning supply budget. The absolute devastation that washed over Renee's face was a masterpiece. The arrogant, entitled smirk she had worn for the past 24 hours shattered into a million irreparable pieces. She looked at Derek, really looked at him, the cheap watch, the scuffed shoes, the pathetic way he was groveling on the floor. "No," Renee whispered, backing away, her hands trembling uncontrollably.
No, no, no.
"You promised me a villa. You promised me a trust fund for the baby.
I
owe $20,000. I threw away my degree." "You threw away a lot more than that," Fiona suddenly hissed, standing up. Fiona's face was contorted in sheer rage. She marched over to Renee and slapped her hard across the face. Smack. "You stupid, delusional bitch," Fiona screamed, grabbing Renee by the hair. "You told me you were set for life. You told me if I helped you deal with Candace, you'd get me a job as a director at the corporation. Because of you, I'm facing felony grand theft auto charges. I'm going to prison for a janitor's baby. Get off me," Renee shrieked, fighting back. The two best friends, who had just spent the entire afternoon mocking me and planning how they were going to divide my assets, were now tearing at each other's hair like feral cats. "Hey, break it up." Two police officers rushed over, physically prying the screeching girls apart and slamming them down into separate chairs. I watched the pathetic display with cold detachment. I turned to the desk sergeant, who was looking at me with a mixture of awe and pity. "Officer," I said smoothly, "I would like to officially press charges against Renee Blue and Fiona Vance for the theft of my vehicle. Furthermore, as the president of Lennox Corporation, I am pressing charges against this man, Derek Vance, for corporate fraud, trespassing, and embezzlement."
Please.
"President Jonah, please." Derek sobbed, slamming his forehead against the floor. "I have a family. My wife will kill me." I paused, raising an eyebrow. "You have a wife?" Renee, who was sobbing into her hands, suddenly looked up, her eyes bloodshot. You're married?" Derek flinched, not daring to look at her. "Yes, she's pregnant with our second child." If Renee could have literally died of humiliation in that moment, she would have. She had mocked me for being a barren widow, paraded her pregnancy as her golden ticket to high society, and demanded I serve her as a maid. In reality, she was nothing more than the gullible side piece of a married maintenance worker who stole toilet paper money. "Keep him in holding," I told the officer. "My corporate legal team will be here in the morning to hand over all security footage and audit reports." I didn't spare another glance for the three of them. As I turned and walked out of the police station, Renee's desperate, wailing screams echoed behind me. "Miss Jonah."
Wait.
"Candace, please. I'm sorry. I'll pay you back. Please don't send me to jail."
Please.
I pushed the heavy glass doors open and stepped out into the cool night air. The silence of the city felt incredibly refreshing. By 8 a.m. the next morning, my temporary hiatus from the corporate world was officially over. I sat in the teacher's apartment, dressed not in the modest cardigans and slacks I usually wore to lecture, but in a tailored charcoal Armani suit. My hair was pulled back into a severe, sleek bun. There was a sharp knock on the door. I opened it to find my actual executive assistant, Chloe, standing there with 3 thick binders and a cup of black coffee. Behind her stood 2 men in sharp suits, my lead corporate attorneys. "Good morning, boss," Chloe said, a sharp, predatory smile on her face. "Welcome back. Did you get it done?" I asked, taking the coffee and stepping aside to let them in. "Everything," Chloe said, slapping the binders onto the small dining table. "I had the IT department pull Derek Vance's keycard logs. He's been accessing the late Mr. Lennox's office every second Sunday of the month for the past 6 months. We also completed a midnight audit of the facility's budget. He's embezzled approximately $45,000 over the last 2 years by creating phantom vendor invoices." "Perfect," I said, taking a sip of the coffee. "Hand the evidence over to the DA. Ensure they push for the maximum sentence. I want him absolutely buried. Consider him a ghost," one of the lawyers, Mr. Sterling, said with a nod. "And regarding the 2 students, Miss Blue and Miss Fiona," I provided.
Right.
"They were denied bail this morning due to the high value of the stolen vehicle. Your Hermes Birkin bag was also inside the car, elevating the theft to aggravated grand larceny. However, Renee Blue's public defender managed to get her a compassionate release on bail pending trial due to her early-stage pregnancy." "Is that so?" I murmured, walking over to the window. "And the debt?" "We filed the civil suit for the $20,000 loan," Sterling confirmed. "Given that she signed a promissory note, it's an open and shut case. We've already submitted a request to freeze her bank accounts, though from what we can see, she has less than $200 to her name. Her mother has uremia," I stated coldly. "That money was supposed to go to her dialysis treatments. Renee used half of it on designer clothes to play the part of a billionaire's mistress." Chloe scoffed in disgust. "What do you want to do about her, boss?" "Nothing illegal," I said softly. "But she made a spectacle of me." She dragged my late husband's name through the mud to satisfy her own vanity. Actions have consequences. Have the university administration notified of her arrest. I'll be resigning from my teaching position today. The campus was buzzing when I arrived. Word of a police raid at the dorms, where officers had come to collect Fiona's belongings for evidence, had spread like wildfire. I walked into the administration building, flanked by Chloe and my 2 lawyers. The sheer aura of corporate intimidation we projected made the college staff part like the Red Sea. We were halfway down the corridor to the dean's office when a shrill, hysterical voice echoed through the hall. "Candace, you vicious bitch." I stopped and turned. Marching down the hallway, looking like an absolute wreck, was Renee. Her hair was greasy and unkempt. The designer dress she had worn the day before was wrinkled and stained, and she was crying aggressively. Several students had stopped in the hallway, pulling out their phones to record. Renee saw the crowd and immediately amplified her performance, dropping to her knees a few feet away from me. "How could you do this to me?" she wailed, clutching her stomach. "I know Igor is dead. I know it now. But you didn't have to ruin my life. You set me up. You knew that man was a fake, and you purposely let me fall into his trap, so you could laugh at me. You're trying to put a pregnant woman in prison over a stupid car ride." The murmurs in the hallway grew louder. Students began whispering, shooting me judgmental looks. Renee was playing the victim card perfectly, relying on the natural sympathy people have for a crying pregnant woman. I didn't flinch. I just looked at her like one looks at a smear of dirt on a shoe. "Chloe," I said calmly. Chloe stepped forward, holding a stack of printed papers. Without a word, she began handing them out to the students in the front row. "What is this?" a student asked, looking at the paper. "That," I said, my voice echoing clearly down the hall, "is a copy of the police report, the arrest warrant, and the signed promissory note." I stepped closer to Renee, looking down at her pathetic, kneeling form. "Let's get the facts straight, Renee. Out of the kindness of my heart, knowing your mother was dying of kidney failure, I lent you $20,000. No interest.
No deadline.
Just a lifeline so your mother wouldn't die." The whispers in the crowd suddenly shifted. "Instead of paying for her treatments," I continued, my voice sharp as glass, "you used that money to buy designer clothes to impress a man you met on Tinder. A man you thought was my dead husband. You came to my face, mocked my fertility, insulted my dead husband, told me you were carrying the heir to my fortune, and demanded I act as your personal servant." Renee's face turned ashen. She stopped crying, her mouth opening and closing like a suffocating fish. "And when I refused," I said, taking one final step toward her, forcing her to lean back, "you stole my $150,000 car and my $30,000 handbag. You didn't fall into a trap, Renee. You jumped off a cliff of your own greed and stupidity. And now, you're upset because gravity did its job." I looked up at the students recording us. "She's been indicted for grand larceny. The man who impregnated her is a married janitorial manager facing 5 years in federal prison for embezzlement. If any of you think she's a victim, feel free to start a GoFundMe for her legal fees." Not a single student spoke. In fact, a few of them stepped away from Renee, looking at her with absolute disgust. "You?" Renee whispered, her eyes wide with a horrific realization. She finally understood that her tears had no power here. My mom needs that money. If you freeze my accounts, she'll die." "You should have thought of that before you decided to become a parasite," I replied coldly. "You brought this upon yourself. Goodbye, Miss Blue. I doubt we will see each other again." I turned on my heel and walked into the dean's office. Behind me, Renee collapsed onto the floor, her fake bravado finally shattered, replaced by the guttural, ugly sobs of a person who realized they had destroyed their own life. 2 months later, I stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows of the president's office on the 50th floor of Lennox Corporation. The city skyline stretched out beneath me, bathed in the golden hues of the setting sun. The office looked exactly as Igor had left it, though now, it was thoroughly sanitized of the filth Derek Vance had brought into it. The door opened behind me. Chloe walked in, carrying a sleek tablet. "Boss, the quarterly reports are in. Profits are up 12% across the tech division."
Good.
"Distribute the bonuses to the department heads," I said, not turning around. "Any other news?" "Just the wrap-up on the legal matters," Chloe said, her tone taking on a slight edge of grim satisfaction. "Derek Vance took a plea deal yesterday. 4.5 years in federal lockup for the embezzlement and fraud. His wife divorced him last week and took full custody of their kids." "And the students?" I asked, taking a sip of the sparkling water in my hand. "Fiona was expelled immediately. She's currently serving 6 months in a county facility for her role in the theft. As for Renee..." Chloe paused, flipping a page on her tablet. "She was expelled as well." Given her pregnancy, the judge gave her 3 years of strict probation and mandatory community service instead of jail time. However, the civil court ruled in our favor. Her wages will be garnished at 40% until the $20,000 plus legal fees is paid back in full. Where is she working? A fast food drive-thru on the outskirts of the city, Chloe replied. Her mother's condition worsened, but the state provided emergency Medicare. They're living in a subsidized studio apartment. She gave birth a few weeks ago. A boy. I stared out at the city. The boy would grow up in poverty, raised by a mother who had tried to shortcut her way through life by stepping on the dead, and fathered by a man who was rotting in a cell. It was a tragic, pathetic end to a story born of pure vanity. Did she ever try to contact the company again? I asked. Chloe smirked. Once. Right after she gave birth. She showed up at the lobby demanding to see the board of directors, claiming she still had the Lennox heir, and demanding child support from the estate. Security didn't even let her past the revolving doors. They threatened to call her probation officer, and she ran off crying. I shook my head slowly. Some people never learn, even when the lesson beats them into the ground. Close the files, Chloe, I said, turning away from the window and walking toward the massive mahogany desk. I'm done playing schoolteacher, and I'm done dealing with children. We have a board meeting in 10 minutes. Let's get to work. Yes, President Jonah, Chloe said, nodding respectfully before turning to leave the office. I sat down in the leather chair. For the first time in 7 years, the heavy, suffocating grief that had clung to me since Igor's death felt entirely gone. I ran a hand over the polished wood of the desk, feeling a faint smile touch my lips. Igor had trusted me with this empire. I had almost let it slip away while hiding in a classroom, running from my own shadows. But looking at the stack of corporate contracts in front of me, I knew exactly where I belonged. I picked up my pen. The widow of Igor Lennox was gone. The president of Lennox Corporation was here to stay.